Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me. Very nice to be here. Perfect to come after Albert, I thought, actually. Really good timing to build on the design aspect, because, of course, ultimately, IKEA is a design company around how we design our lives at home. And I think most of you will probably be familiar with IKEA. It's always interesting to do a bit of a hand raiser in a room, depending on what country you're in. Who in this room owns something from IKEA in their home? Yeah, so it's sort of, I'm not going to go through facts and figures about the scale of IKEA and all the rest of it, but of course we are the world's biggest home furnishing company. We have almost 1 billion customers coming through our doors every year. So you can imagine the platform that we have and the ability to reach scale and how we can actually use that scale and that platform to influence positive change. I don't normally share a personal anecdote, but I thought actually it felt relevant in relation to what Albert was saying earlier, that I think this point in time, when we talk about do less harm, do no evil, or even better, create a positive vision that we want to pull people towards, it's personal. It's not just what we do for our work and our jobs and our vocations anymore, it's personal. And for me, I started in art and design, and I was a photographer, ironically, in fashion, music, and portraiture for about 8 years, and I was also a designer. And actually, at some point, for a number of reasons, which I won't go into here, there was a question for me around, am I part of the problem or am I part of the solution? And what do I want to be? And of course, it's a complex answer because we're all part of the problem, but we can choose to be more part of the solution. And that's an opportunity that we all have in whatever job we do, for whatever company we work for, whatever our profession is. So I'm here to focus on Circular IKEA, to share a bit about what that means for us on a really practical level, but also how that's driving a very exciting time in the history of our company to really unleash innovation and to create a groundswell of entrepreneurship within the company and also within the ecosystems that we work with. And of course, sustainability and climate crisis and where we are today is no longer a topic for the few. It's very much at the center and forefront of decision making. And it's really important to understand for us that actually it's not a strategy that sits on the side of what we do as core business. We really have looked at how we need to completely transform our business to be around for not just the next 75 years. We were 75 years as a company last year, but also how we can continue to thrive and be relevant for not just today, but also for the future. And we've stopped talking about climate change. We talk about climate crisis. We see it in our business today. There are many markets where we experience floods and absolute direct impact on our supply chains already. If you can imagine that a company like IKEA consumes around 1% of the world's commercial cotton in our product range. So if we want to be around, it's not even just a nice to do, it's an absolute essential from a commercial perspective. And of course, in sustainable consumption, it's ironic maybe for some that a company like IKEA talks about unsustainable consumption, but if we will move from 7 billion to 10 billion people in the next few years, and we're expecting 3 billion people on the planet to rise into middle class, what does that mean then for how we consume resources? Hence the circular idea of how we have to completely transform. And inequality goes with that as well. If we don't create equality in everything we do and take people with us on this journey, there's no way we can create the balance that we need. So we have 3 pillars of how we innovate and drive the business in the total business. So you can imagine IKEA as a group of companies. We're a design company, we're a home furniture company, we're a retailer, we're an investor, we're a real estate owner. And across all of those dimensions, we look at how we can become a more affordable company for the many. It's about how we reach more of the many where they are, so hence the movement towards cities, but also how we can intrinsically be a people and planet positive company. And as you can see, these are 3 pillars that sit across every strategy, across the entire business. And then I want to show this, well, actually before I do that, because that's actually 2 minutes of just a bit of an inspiration of where we are today. If we can turn the sound up a little bit, that would be great.
What if we could create a better everyday life for the many people? For the couples that turn into families, the children, the lovers, for the old ladies, the single mothers, and for those who need to start all over. What if we always side with the many by designing the price tag before anything else? What if furniture could be better for nature, better for people? What if we could make furniture out of waste? What if old glass could get new life? What if we could collect all these bottles and turn them into something else? Like this chair. What if we could plant more trees than we use? And what if we could use wood in new ways so that this tree and all of these trees could grow to be just trees? What if we turn the tables on food and make meatballs without meat? What if we turn the tables on tables and make screws that aren't screws? In fact, what if we lose the screws completely so we can put things up, take them down, and put them up again? What if we try to design new behaviors instead of new products? Better play instead of toys, and better sleep instead of beds? What if water taps could save water? And light bulbs could save light? What if all our stores could power themselves? And what if the best packaging is no packaging? What if we could make furniture out of air? What if we tried twice and failed twice? And what if we try again? What if we celebrate our differences? Because without each and every person, we wouldn't be complete. What if we never settled for an answer? What if we always ask ourselves, what if?
So on that note, of course, it's very powerful to be asking yourself the question, what if? It creates that open mind of curiosity and a willingness to find the solutions, even if you can't quite imagine what those might be. And that's the sort of space we're in at the moment in the business. So like, how do we create this now movement within our company with the mindsets and the skill sets and the competencies and the being allowed and being given the permission to think like this and completely think differently about how we operate. We have our 3 pillars from a people and planet positive perspective, which is one of the 3 roads, as you saw. And just to kind of touch on what those mean a little bit before we go into the circular piece. Healthy and sustainable living is the core of what we do from our products and services perspective. We provide products and services with the ambition to change 1 billion people's lives for the better. It's also how we look at circular consumption, sharing economy, and how we change behaviors around consumption. And then you start to see that behavior change and the collaboration between consumers and customers and ecosystems of smaller businesses is really essential to make that work. Circular and climate positive sits across more of the operational side. It's about how we make our products. It's about how we operate our business. We have an ambition, which I will talk more about, which is both exciting and ridiculous and frightening, is that we will be a 100% circular business by 2030. And it kind of requires some very clear strategic goals that I will mention again in more detail, like 100% of our materials will be made in our products. We have around 12,000 products will be made from recycled or recyclable materials. It includes innovations around circular business model, leasing, buyback, all kinds of exciting areas. But it also requires, to an extent, kind of cathedral thinking in the sense that we're building the blocks, but we don't quite know how to put that final brick on the dome once it's done. But we have to have that really big long-term ambition to get there. And of course, fair and equal, if you don't bring the people, your supply chain, internally and externally, with you, and don't look at how you have an impact locally where you are, that won't work either. So it has to sit across all of these 3 dimensions. And we are signed up to science-based targets. We're very specific about our goals. We measure everything we do, so we know that we will come in under 1.5 degree increase. But of course, already we know that's not enough. So that's a whole different conversation. But nevertheless, it's really clear about how it led us up to the Sustainable Development Goals throughout the business. And we are purpose-driven. So actually, this vision of IKEA, which most people are still not aware of, actually, and even I wasn't aware before I joined the company less than 5 years ago, is that it exists to create a better everyday life for the many people. And actually, again, if you have a purpose that really is alive in the business, it's for the many. It has to be democratic in terms of value and affordable for the many. And will it create a better life? What does that mean? How do you define that? It's not just about products and services. Does it actually have a measurable, better impact on people's lives. So this is something that we really use as a goal, as a compass in the organization on a day-to-day basis. And just touching on the fact that we have our original founder, Ingvar Kamprad, died last year, but it was really at the core and the values of the culture of the business from the offset to really do more with less and to not waste. So again, there's a thread of a culture that really drives our ability to really stay relevant. So again, why circular? And I don't know how many in this room are really familiar with what exactly circular economy is. I'm sure some are really familiar, maybe some are on the journey, but just to touch very quickly on why it's important. I touched on resource scarcity. Of course, smaller companies won't necessarily think about the enormous scale that we have to think about, but if we're going to be reliant on virgin materials, we will not be around for a lot longer. So we have to think about closing the loop on materials and reusing materials in order to survive as a business, but also in order to actually live up to this better everyday life that we talk about and the reasons for why we exist. And also, it's really also about customer, very commercially, it's about customer behavior changing. So how many people in this room live in London? So quite a few don't, but actually, of course, many cities and many places, we have all these sharing platforms for secondhand goods. We're doing it anyway. We're actually doing this type, we're buying like this. People do not necessarily want to own anymore. They don't necessarily want to hold on to their goods. So it just makes business sense as well. And of course, this linear business model that have made not only a company like IKEA, but all companies very successful. It's this take, make, sell, and dispose model, which really has gotten us into the problems and the situation we're in today. And what we need to do is to close the loop on materials. We need to start with the top of the waste hierarchy, if you like. We have to look at reuse first. Once we've designed our products for reuse, we need to look at those behaviors. We need to look at how we refurbish products. We have to look at how we remanufacture once products are ready for remanufacture. And right at the bottom is recycling. Of course, most people still, I go to family dinners and I have old cousins to meet me and say, so how's the recycling business going? Because I have sustainability in my title. And that's still the kind of mindset of a lot of people. And our commitments as a company sit across the whole picture. We can't just look at one part, and it's about how we create 100% circular products by 2030, all our materials being recycled and renewable. And again, I just spoke at a conference with colleagues in Turkey, which was our textile supply chain at the weekend. And of course, it's very powerful to really influence change when you're saying, if you're not going to change to these goals in the future, you will not have no business with a company like IKEA. So we're bringing the whole supply chains with us. But very importantly, from a marketplace and meeting the customer perspective, is this business model innovation around what are the services that we're providing for customers. So at the moment, there's a lot of innovation being tested around things like leasing office furniture, buying back second-hand furniture, et cetera, et cetera. So lots of interesting learnings from that. Not always easy, but we're on the way. But again, we can't do this by ourselves. So we work in partnership with a whole range of innovators and partners on how to get there. And it sits across 3 dimensions. It's about the range development. That is, for us, our product design and material approach to design of products and services. It's our supply chain, and it's also how we meet our customers. And then we have to redesign design. We have to really think from the beginning how the end of life, second, third, fourth life will pan out. So when we then build on what Albert was sharing from Microsoft, actually we have to relook at design. And if there are designers in the room, whether you're a business designer or a product designer, whatever that looks like, the longevity of anything you design has to be part of the thinking from the beginning. So we are in the process of the small task of redesigning 12,000 products plus with this in mind. And for that, we've redesigned 9 circular design principles. There are several companies right now, including Nike, that's made their open source principles available. And this is some of the things that I get asked quite often from students in particular. Why am I not learning this at my design course? So why is this not part of my curriculum? But of course, educational institutions don't always move quickly enough. So actually, some of this is happening much faster in the market than in education right now. And then, as mentioned, I've touched on some of these things. It's about looking at products as material banks. It becomes very different to how we think about it. being much smarter with the resources that we use. We have to completely design out waste from how we think. There should be no such thing as waste. And we have to work together with others to make that happen. Every market, every country has a different setup, different maturity around business infrastructure. So we have to think also very locally. And these principles can be made available to you if there are interest after this talk, but very much around how do you design with what we call democratic design principles, but really thinking from a quality, function, low price, form, and sustainability perspective, but really wiring in circular thinking and longevity right from that point of view. Oh. Just going to make sure that I'm not completely... Okay. And so, just to give you some examples, we've already started. And I think also often when circular economy is on the topic is on the agenda, it can get quite technical, it can get quite manufacturing focused, and also quite grand and big. And of course it is, all those things. It's also very humble and everyday and very practical and very simple. If you then look at something like this, it's a very humble everyday product called tomat, which means tomato in Swedish, but it's made from waste plastics. And our little storage box, which is a great storage box, it just happens to be made from upcycled PET plastic bottles. And we're obviously learning and completely rethinking our manufacturing process as we are developing these products. But also larger products that hopefully you look at a kitchen like this and you think, oh, that's a, hopefully, sexy, sleek, nice kitchen. I'd like that in my home, well designed. It also happens to be made from upcycled plastic bottle film on the front and recycled wood from our production in the carcasses of the kitchen. And it's not yet a circular product because we haven't yet closed the loop on this product. It will only be circular once we've actually taken it down and remanufactured this product back into a kitchen, if you like. But we're on the journey. And again, as part of this learning and failing, and I don't know how many versions of this was obviously developed before they produced a final version, which is not the final version, because it will continue to evolve. And also things like products made from recycled materials from our waste materials in our production. This is glass that would normally have gone to waste, which is now turned into vase that actually influences the design aesthetic in itself. And when we then look at supply chain, there might not be many people here that work in sort of manufacturing and reverse flow logistics, but we need to completely think about how we work in partnership with the ecosystems around the business. If you look at a picture like this, what immediately comes to mind when you think about it? What's like the first word that comes to mind? Probably waste. These are resources from the back of our stores here in London. You've got pallets of paper there that goes back into the back of Billy bookcases. We sell a Billy bookcase every 8 seconds in the world. It's crazy. Those are plastic pallets from our packaging materials in our operations, and that goes back into some of the products that you saw, like the tomato water bottle. And we're also turning our textile waste into, and also our the textiles that we take back in our stores into new products. So it's about starting to really remanufacture and rewire how we think about everything that goes through our stores. And of course, supply chains are massive and hugely important and complex. And then, of course, when you start to look at then what is the manufacturing setup in a market. If you're in China or India, it's very different to the UK. And unfortunately, I'd love to say the UK is really advanced, but of course we're not. So we have a very different setup here than, say, Sweden. But now you have to start to look at how you partner across, and it's, you can imagine, quite complex. But actually then, for creative, entrepreneurial people and ambitious individuals who want to really get their teeth into something exciting, this is exactly the sort of nebulous, complex work that we all love to do most days. But it's also massive opportunities for innovation and thinking differently along the way. And then, of course, meeting the customer. As a retailer, we have an enormous opportunity to work with customers in new ways. And you'll know, because many people here, I'm sure, work with customer offers and business models of trying to really break through. We know that people want to engage with brands and companies in new ways. They don't want that functional relationship anymore. They want the emotional long-term relationship, and they want their needs understood and met. And also we're working on really prolonging the life of products and materials. How do we work with people to create those services and the skills and behaviors to prolong the life of products? You know, we've gone out in London and done research, and people within a certain age bracket don't even feel comfortable using a hammer or using a drill. Like a whole generation has lost basic skills of how to maintain things. So if we have this sustainability mindset ambition, how are we going to actually get there if people don't even feel comfortable using basic tools? So we're looking at how we really understand people. We know that people don't want to be wasteful. They feel bad when they are. They want help with it. They want an emotional connection with their brands. People are waking up to the responsibility that they have. They also want to be involved. They want to take action. So brands and companies have an amazing opportunity to facilitate that and turn that into an opportunity. And we also know that from a commercial perspective, if you're in a big city, and I'm one of these people, I don't own a car. If I'm going to buy a new mattress or a bed or a large bulky item, I want the company that I buy from to take away my old stuff, and I want them to take care of it responsibly. Suddenly you have an opportunity that's commercial, but it's also sustainable, and it's an opportunity to think very differently. And we're really working on scaling this up across many markets, but in the UK we've been running a furniture take-back service for quite a long time. But then also reuse services. How do we work with local charity ecosystems to make sure that those products that are returned have another life and can actually benefit other communities? We're looking at textile take-back. At the moment, there's a partnership between H&M and IKEA to look at the chemical compounds that go into textiles. So then long term, we can try and work on this together. Again, two different sectors, two different companies trying to really find a way to sort this out. But actually, as a retailer, we also need to look at the customer behavior and starting that dialogue around taking things back and returning them. And we realized we also needed a behavior change program around actually people don't necessarily know what to do. Our research shows that now everyone understands, actually let me rephrase that. There is a majority of people, certainly in most markets, apart from Australia and the US, that actually believe that climate change is human impact, but they don't know what to do and they can't think of the solutions and what the actions that they can take. So companies have an enormous opportunity to provide the actions, the products and the services. And we've worked with what we call our Live Lagon program for the last 5 years to really build this movement around actions and behavior in the home. I'm going to go through this quite quickly, got 5 more minutes, but if you haven't been to IKEA Greenwich yet, on the Greenwich Peninsula, come and visit us. We opened our second leading sustainable store in February this year. It's the first time that we've really designed a space for co-creation and a hub for communities. So we have co-creation spaces, we have a roof garden. We're looking at how to really reinvent our retail experience with our local communities and with partners. And it's not just about shopping and it's not just about retail. It's about how do we create a place to meet, learn, share, and shop. And in Greenwich, we have our first ever learning lab, which is the first space where we're looking at what are the skills and opportunities that people are looking for in order to change their lifestyles. How, as a company, are we providing that experience and those skills and knowledges, but also together with other experts, other partners. And we're looking at scaling this globally. We're really piloting an innovation concept that we will then look at what that means for IKEA globally. So I just want to really sort of wrap it up by saying that it really is about staying relevant as a big company, as any company in society, with a change in expectations, the change in supply chains, the change in material availability, and what people need in their day-to-day. And also, it will take every one of us, certainly within our company, but through our supply chain, whatever job you have, or whatever job you do, or whatever company you work for, is what can I do within my sphere of influence that will change and move the dial one step closer? And that's a choice we can all make internally and externally. But of course, most things remain to be done. So there's really about being on this journey together. I think I'm certainly learning, and my team, and we're all learning that it's quite a sprint, and we also need to learn how to rest and recover. You can't actually have a sprint after a sprint after a sprint, although there's an urgency to this, both from a commercial perspective and for a climate change and environmental perspective. How do we create those cultures that enables and unleashes entrepreneurship whilst also being human and wholehearted and willing to be vulnerable in this process? Because we're going to have to learn and fail fast, all the stuff that you know already. And with that, I'll open up for a couple of questions, but just to say, I think we're all in this together. And it's a decision to be made by anyone of what their role is to play on this journey, whether they're a small business or a big business. And that's where the real potential of change will happen. Thank you.